What's up, everybody? Doing back. Welcome to a brand new video. And yeah, there's a lot of drama in this community right now, but life goes on, right? And I want to talk about a movie from 1958. It's a Toho science fiction movie that's not a kaiju movie. It is called The H-Man, and it is very underrated. So welcome to my review of The H-Man. So this is the 1958 Toho science fiction movie. I just stated that, so I just kind of retreading myself here, but you get the point, right? So here's the thing. This movie, I got it in like a 3-pack science fiction pack right here, the Toho collection, right? So it comes with H-Man, Battle in Outer Space, and Mothra. So I'm starting off with the H-Man because it's the first one in the disc order. Then I'll be doing Battle in Outer Space, and eventually I'll watch Mothra. So the H-Man, what can you really say about it? It's my first Toho non-Godzilla movie, so that's very special. Or I guess I shouldn't say non-Godzilla, right? Because I have seen Rodan, I've seen War of the Gargantuas, but really it's my first Toho non-Kaiju movie. It's the very first one that I've seen that doesn't take place in the, I guess, Showa era universe, the Showa, cinematic universe, whatever you want to call it, where all the movies are all kaiju movies are somehow tied together. And I guess there's supposedly like all the science fiction ones are too, but there's no real direct carryover from these ones, so I'm not really going to count that. But this is my first Toho non-kaiju movie, and I really liked it. So it's still a tokusatsu movie. I really liked it. So getting into it, the plot is very intriguing and interesting. One thing that I noticed right off the bat is this movie isn't your standard, I guess, science fiction B movie. It is a B movie. I mean, it starts out with nuclear bomb footage, so right there you're like, okay, this is the kind of thing I'm in for, But this one actually handles it a lot better. It's actually a lot more of a good film than most B movies, and I really enjoy that. So I love the blend between the crime stories, and if you haven't seen it, I'm not really going to break down the plot beat for beat, but basically I guess I'll explain it quickly because it is an unknown movie. But basically the plot is something like this. There's this criminal, he vanishes into nowhere. The police don't know where he went, so the whole movie focuses around trying to find where he went to, if he disappeared, where he ran off to. His clothes were left behind, so they're trying to figure out what happened. The police are trying to figure out where he went so they can stop his crimes. They're investigating his girlfriend, who's also being attacked by the mob because the boyfriend was from the mob. The criminal, he was in like this mob, this gang kind of thing, and the police are in the middle of a war with this gang, and it's really interesting. And then you also have the subplot with the scientist, and it is kind of weird that the science fiction elements is the subplot of the movie until the third act. And personally, I really liked that, but what happens is there's a scientist who discovers that people can kind of vanish if they're exposed to too much radiation. They'll turn into what is known as the H-Man, so they can either be one of two forms. There's this weird green ghost monster that chases people around, and he kills them, and then there's this weird slime monster, and most of them turn into the slime monster. However, we do see a couple of the big green ghost monsters. So it's a pretty complicated plot, but I really love the blend between a crime, like almost Sherlock Holmes style, investigation movie where they're really trying to figure out what is going on with these criminals. I love the fact that it's all about this disappearing criminal, and it's about the police just getting caught up in this situation way over their heads. I think that's great. And then it's about the mob wanting to kill the main girl, Aria. I don't really know what her real name is. It's spelled A-R-A-I, Aria. I don't. Whatever her name is, I'm going to call her Aria. So it's about the police trying to like protect her and at the same time interrogate her, whereas the mobsters are like trying to kill her, and she's also this nightclub singer. And then there's the science fiction elements of it, and I love the way they blend the science fiction elements into it. So they have the scientist who is the love interest of Aria or whatever, and which is weird because she was the girlfriend of the criminal from the start, and so they have this like love interest kind of thing going on. So it's I like it. I like the movie a lot. I like the way that it blends all these different subplots together. Now, when it comes down to it, crime drama versus science fiction, which one in this movie do I think works better, and which one do I like more? I like this. I like the crime drama. The science fiction stuff kind of falls off to the side. It's really not in the forefront of the movie until the third act, and I think the third act is the weakest because I really do find the crime stuff more intriguing. So now the characters are not only interesting, but they're entertaining, which is something you really need for a science fiction movie. Really, you need that for any movie in the world. But this one has some pretty great characters. I wouldn't say great, but it has good characters for the era. Now, I don't think there are any like Mothra vs. Godzilla cast or anything like that, but I do think in terms of cheesy B movies, like science fiction movies, I do think this has a pretty solid cast. So we have Aria, the main girl. These are the three standouts. So she's the main girl of the movie. She's kind of the main character. She's the one who blends all the storylines together. You have Dr. Masada, who is really also, he's not a total main character. He kind of shows up in the second act, and then after that point he's the main, like he's intertwined between tons of different storylines, so that's really cool to see. Then you have Tomiganai. I'm not gonna say his name again. He is the investigator. He's played by Akihiko Hirata, aka Dr. Serizawa, so it's really cool to see him back. And there is a lot of returning Toho, like Godzilla actors in this movie. You see a lot of the Godzilla actors intertwined through here. You have one of the, I don't remember which one, but you have one of the main villains from Mothra vs. Godzilla is one of the main characters in here. There's cameos from people from King Kong vs. Godzilla, and I guess it's not really a cameo, but like they show up, the actors show up in scenes, and then they get killed off, so it's pretty cool to see. So the special effects are not great. They're 50s special effects. You know, this movie came out in the 50s. What are you going to expect? And it was Japan, so they were behind America, and so, you know, you can't really be like, oh, I'm going for the special effects. They don't hold up very well. There's some very great fire effects at the very end of the movie, but the slime, it doesn't really look great. And when it's killing people, it doesn't look good either. It looks like something that came out of like one of the old like science fiction TV shows from like the 60s and the 50s from America too. So it doesn't really hold up for a movie in terms of special effects, but they are, I guess you could say, they have that old school charm. I didn't really like it. That's one of the other reasons why I think the crime elements of this story is a lot more entertaining than the actual science fiction elements of this story. So the ending itself, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I personally recommend you go watch The H-Man if you're a fan of Godzilla movies, if you're a fan of tokusatsu. I personally recommend you go watch The H-Man. It's a fairly enjoyable movie. The ending, however, it is a bit underwhelming once you kind of figure out what The H-Man is. I feel like the whole crime aspect of the story is a lot more entertaining and a lot more intriguing than the actual science fiction kind of, this is this monster that's created by too much nuclear radiation. You can either turn into this slime monster or a ghost monster that will kill you and turn you into a slime monster, and if the slime touches you, you turn into the slime. It's really weird. And you also leave your clothes behind too. It like sinks you out of your clothes, which is what happens to the dude at the start of the movie. There is, like I said, some cheese in here, so we'll get into that in a little bit, but just now that I have the line in my head, I want to mention it here. There's this part when the investigator is talking to the scientist Masada, and he's basically saying, what do you think happened to this man? You're here for a reason. What do you think happened to the criminal? He disappeared. And he, out of the blue, this is the first time you're introduced to the concept, and he doesn't bother explaining anything at this point. He, out of the blue, just says, well, do you think the rain melted him? And you know, you even have the professor, Akihiko Hirata's character, is basically like, oh, it totally did. You're definitely right. And then he kicks him out. Like, he's messing with, he's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, which is really funny because it's like, that's how you would react. But it comes out of nowhere, and the scientist doesn't bother explaining until much later in the movie, like 20 minutes later, that no, I know for a fact people can, you know, melt, the rain can melt people if it has too much nuclear radiation, because I know for a fact that people have melted before. This is a Honda movie for sure, so we'll get into the directing too, but it's a very Ishiro Honda movie, a very strong kind of nuclear metaphor in this movie. It's not as well handled or as well realized or as subtle as it is in, you know, Godzilla, but this one, it is pretty cool to see just how directly they messed with the whole Lucky Dragon incident. Like they mess with it in the 54 Godzilla movie, they have the whole Lucky Dragon kind of recreation where it's going along and then it gets erupted into flames. They have that whole kind of like recreation of the fear of the time based off the Bikini Atoll H-bomb test that America did in 1954. But this movie really directly shows nuke goes off, you have the boat too close, now this death ash is on the ship and the people are doomed because of it. We never saw that directly kind of showing of what happened with the Lucky Dragon incident in Godzilla, and so it is cool to see it in this movie. It's also really cool because it is the base of the science fiction of this movie. That is what creates the H-Man. It turns all these people into the H-Man, which is another weird concept you have to wrap your mind around. The H-Man is comprised of everyone he kills, so it kills. So it's like the Blob. If it kills you, you turn into the goo, and you now are the H-Man. So you are this one unit, this one giant goo unit, and you move together. And then there are those ghosts that are never really explained. They're like big ghost people that are green and they attack you, so that's really cool to see as well. So the ending, however, it is just a bit underwhelming. It's a big sewer chase, and it ends in the city being on fire. It's pretty cool, the special effects of the fire, like I said, but overall, it is not like, it's not anything, great. Now, the soundtrack is not memorable at all. It's Masaru Sato. He does some of the Godzilla movies. I believe he does Raids again. I know for a fact he does Son of Godzilla. He does Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. His soundtracks later on are a lot better than his early ones. So, I ripped on Godzilla Raids Again soundtrack and Godzilla-thon. Here, I'm not going to really rip on the soundtrack. I'm just going to say there's one memorable military march. The rest of the songs are just nothing. They're I can't even think of a single other song that plays in the whole movie. But I definitely remember looking up the composer and being like, oh, hey, look who it is. Which is cool to see Honda and Masaru Sato working together. Usually Honda works with Ifukube. So there you go. There is that. The soundtrack is not memorable. The tone is very consistent, very dark and ominous. I really like the tone of the movie. The directing was very impressive. So there's a scene in the movie when it's this great tracking shot through a dance club, through this nightclub, where you are following different background characters, character to character, and you start on one family, I guess, or not family, but you start on one couple, and then you go to the next, and you go to the next, and someone walks past the camera, you follow the person walking past the camera, and you catch someone else, and you follow them for a little bit. Really cool. It's very impressive in the way the camera moves around, and there's also this great scene of I believe it's in the police headquarters, and then it pans straight into the nightclub. It's really cool to see. So that is what made me look up the director. I was like, whoever directed this, they did a great job. And then I found out it was Honda, and I was like, that makes sense, right? This is Honda's movie right here. This is a total Honda movie. So I thought that was really cool. Standout moment is the scene in the nightclub where the police, the mobsters, and the H-Man all are in the they're in the nightclub together, and they're all in a path to hit each other. It's going to be this really cool action sequence. It doesn't actually result in a big moment like I thought it would, but the build up for what happens is really cool. So it's very slow, very intense. You see the police and the mobsters are in this place, and they notice each other, and it's really cool. And then the H-Man climbs in a window and attacks this girl, and then it leads to the police having to leave the mobsters, which I thought it would have been cool if the mobsters and the police had a shootout, but they don't. The police have to go out and they have to investigate the H-Man. Meanwhile, the mobsters go and attack the police. So it's kind of cool, but not totally what I would have done with it. And you could stop spoiling the movie. It came out in 1958. If you were gonna watch it, you probably watched it, and if you didn't leave earlier in the review and I said go watch it, sorry, I didn't really spoil anything big. That's not a huge moment in the movie. That's actually kind of one of the lower points of the movie. Nothing in that scene totally 100% impacts very heavily the rest of the movie. You lose some characters, and it kind of pushes the characters into going into this final act, but it doesn't really amount to anything major. So I'm sorry if I spoiled that for you. Also, I made sure not to spoil the ending, so that's all that really matters. Not that the ending is anything crazy, but at least you can have something to look forward to. So the question becomes, is there too much cheese in this movie? A little bit. It is a little bit too cheesy, but that's just part of the charm of it, I guess. It detracts from my rating of the movie, but ultimately I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because it was really actually surprising. I thought that I was not going to like this movie. Maybe it's just that I've sat through so many bad movies by this point. Whenever I see a movie that's decent like this one, I'm like, yeah, that's a good movie, because there's so many bad ones that I've seen. It just kind of makes the standard a lot higher, or a lot lower actually, so the standard for what I consider a good movie might be lowered because I've seen just too many bad movies by this point. Maybe that's the case. But regardless of what the case is, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie. I definitely recommend it. And if you want, definitely check out this collection right here. It's got Battle in Outer Space, The H-Man, and Mothra, so it's going to be really cool. It's got the Japanese cuts and the English cuts, so I'll be checking out Battle in Outer Space next, and I'll do my review for that next. So thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man.